As a guy who makes videos where I use WordPress as my main tool and I show people how to do stuff, I haven't really talked a whole lot except for in my weekly newsletter about this whole WP Engine Matt Mullenweg thing. And I figure also people have been talking about it endlessly. And if you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with the Inside Baseball. It's occurred to me that I haven't really commented on this YouTube channel. It isn't as if my thoughts on the matter really change anything. They're really not even all that important in the space. But I just figured, being that I do have a YouTube channel in this space, I figure perhaps I should make a few my points about it. Because I also do see a little bit of alarmism, and I wonder, is it deserved? Are we looking at the potential end of WordPress? Is it better? Is WordPress now too unstable, and you should go check out other platforms like Drupal or Webflow or something like that? Where do we stand? So, with all that said, I just kind of wanted to make a few off the cuff comments about the entire thing, and it's just going to be my opinion. One of the reasons I haven't talked about this a whole heck of a lot is mainly because I feel a little bit like an intruder talking about it. I consider myself to be a somewhat advanced user of WordPress. Ultimately, I think I'm more in the customer service business. I help my clients as a support avenue through concierge. And so basically I'm there to support them with whatever needs to be done. I mean, sometimes I'm handling stuff with their email and it's got nothing to do with WordPress. So I'm more of an advanced user. I look at things holistically. I am not a WordPress developer. I know how to code some stuff, but I don't consider myself a programmer. If you ask me to program my own WordPress plugin, it's going to be a rough one. I'm a little out of practice. And I definitely don't get involved in the WordPress community from a developer, core contributor thing. There's definitely aspects of that side of WordPress that I simply just don't deal with. And so from that perspective, there are ins and outs of this stuff that frankly I've been concerned that I might speak about things that I don't know. And therefore, so that's a part of the issue, just being honest with you. So, and the other thing too is there's so many people out there talking about this whole thing with Matt Mullenweg that there is definitely not a whole lot of need to reiterate everything. At the end of the day, if you're watching this video, you kind of already have probably seen the affair play out. So I'm not going to give a play-by-play of what has occurred between Matt Mullenweg and WP Engine. Overall, I will say, I think that this is primarily a matter of inside baseball between us WordPress geeks. I think that we look at this as like watching a drama unfold. And I think something about the way the world works these days is people like to watch these dramas. It's almost like all our lives are boring enough. So we watch this thing play out and we get to nominate who the good guy and the bad guy is. And overall, it looks as if the community is really a little sour on Matt Mullenweg right now. And it's almost like it's a pile on. People are having fun just ripping the guy to shreds. And I'll be honest, I think some of it may be deserved. But I also think we need to not lose sight of the fact that we're here to a big extent because of the work of Matt Mullenweg. So it isn't as if just because he's been acting a little weird, and I totally think so too, in the last few months, I'm not going to sit here and get onto the bandwagon where I'm just going to bash the guy around. I know how social media works. I know people like to pile on. I don't want to pile on other than just commenting. So for the sake of putting my opinion onto a YouTube channel that does talk about WordPress. Out in the real world where normal people are using WordPress, it's business as usual for the most part. A lot of people aren't even aware of this. This is kind of the kind of stuff that you're seeing in discussion groups with a bunch of other WordPress people primarily. And sometimes you'll see something pop up on TechCrunch. But for most people who use WordPress, they don't even know about this stuff. That's the thing. If you look out at the big picture, this is just inside baseball for WordPress nerds like me. All right. Now, overall, I think that Matt started off with a good point on the whole thing. I don't like the way he's managed everything, but I think he started off with a good point and then it went sour because I think the way that he's handled it was frankly pretty stupid. And I don't think he's been consistent with how he's handled the issues with trademarks. That whole thing about acting like WP Engine as trademark infringement. So many people out there are using WP. It's been understood for the longest time that you could use WP. It's not confusing. Nobody was confused by the word WP Engine and thinking that it was associated with WordPress. I guarantee you that. I don't know where he came up with that. It's just not true. WordPress.com, which is his company, confuses the shit out of people. Nobody was confused by WP Engine. So I think that was an excuse to play out something that he kind of wanted to do. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong. That's what it seems like. I don't think he's been consistent about it. I think he's going based on emotion at this point. But underneath all that, I think he started off with an overall good point about contributing to core, and he has this, the efforts to get different companies to contribute to core. I think there's some value to that. I just don't think the way that he went about this was smart in any way. Outside of the right or wrong of it, I think what's coming out of this is that we're exposing some weak points in the WordPress ecosystem, and it brings up just larger issues. And I think the big thing is that the whole ecosystem is too centralized around Matt. The funny thing is that there's pros and cons to that. I will say I do think that WordPress is as big as it is to a large extent because of some centralization around Matt. Now, because the WordPress trademark is what it is, he owns it. Okay. Now, the funny thing is, he says it's the WordPress Foundation, but from what I can tell, that's just fuzzy for Matt. There's two other people on that board. It seems as if they're like nobodies. So basically, it sounds like Matt has monopolistic control over the entire thing, and he tried to make it look like he didn't. So that exposes a weak point. And it also exposes the weak point about how much this ecosystem depends on WordPress.org and the repository there, and that he completely controls that. Unfortunately, it's not only control. It would be okay if he controlled it as a point of benevolence and consistency. However, he has proven that he's not. He is willing to steal and fork other people's plugins. He did it with advanced custom fields. I thought that was a real boneheaded maneuver on his part. He's been willing to lock people out, kick them out. He's acting like that is just not how one acts if you want an ecosystem to thrive. And so the one of the strong points that's actually helped WordPress get to be as big as it is has now turned into a problem. I think the real thing that comes up here is that the world of WordPress needs to decentralize. It needs to move away from Matt. It doesn't mean that we cast Matt to the curb. I think it's kind of like how in the US government we're supposed to have checks and balances. Those checks and balances exist for a reason. We broke away from England because everything was ran by a king, and there was a lot of issues with that, right? I see the parallels here with the world of WordPress. Right now, Matt Mullenweg is basically the king. And when the king loses his rocker, loses his magnetic north on his little personal compass, it throws things into limbo. And it doesn't mean WordPress is going to fall apart. I just think it exposes some issues. And I think those issues will be solved by decentralizing. It doesn't mean that Matt needs to go away. I just think that Matt needs to not be the center of the WordPress world. I mean, on the flip side, look at it. The things are really centralized around WordPress.org. Who pays for that? That website's not free. Okay, it costs a lot of damn money to keep that thing up. It's understandable. If I'm running a website and I'm paying for that, I'd probably feel some sense of ownership over that, and I probably also could feel like I could make the rules, even if the rules might ultimately not help, but I have the right to do it. So I think it's not I think we need to decentralize away from just WordPress.org. And I have seen some talk about that with regard to different repositories, basically different app stores for themes and plugins. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's necessarily just an escape from Matt. I think it's more for the health of the ecosystem. You look at some of the, like I have some interest in the world of crypto. You look at one of the strengths of Bitcoin is the fact that it's decentralized and nobody can shut it off. And I think what we need to do in the world of WordPress is introduce some decentralization so that Matt might continue to be the big thing with WordPress.org, but we don't have to completely rely on that. And we can actually put some real work and marketing chops into creating other app stores for WordPress. It would be really easy to do because the code is all open source, nice and easy to do it. So that it does splinter the ecosystem up some, but I think it's just kind of a necessary thing so that we're not at a point where Matt can just take people's stuff or shut people out of the ecosystem. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. So I do think decentralization is probably going to be one of the things that comes out of this entire affair. Another thing that I think needs to happen, I just don't know if it will because a lot of it's going to rely on Matt. But I think that the trademark needs to go to a true WordPress Foundation. And I'm not a WordPress Foundation that is basically a disguise. Underneath it, it's all Matt. I think we need a real one with a lot of people in it. There needs to be some consistency. There needs to be guidelines on a very simple website about how the trademark works. I personally think that the trademark should be transferred to a WordPress Foundation that is just not where Matt might be on the board, so to speak, but he's not the major player. I think there needs to not be a major player. I think there needs to be more people there. We need to know who they are. I think that's a necessary thing for the WordPress ecosystem to move forward. Maybe it will happen at some point. I do think that Matt's going to have to pipe down a little bit first, and people probably need to stop attacking him and putting him on the defense constantly. And then maybe he will eventually see the light in that regard if he wants this thing to not continue to have these types of issues. Now, I don't know. Maybe Matt thinks that this world of WordPress is so strong that nothing can really hurt it. I don't really know what he's thinking, but I do think that as long as the rules with regard to the WordPress trademark can be changed on his whim, that will be a problem. And I do think that we have to remove the whim from it by having a transparent WordPress Foundation where everything that happens there is transparent, not fake transparency, which is what I think is going on right now. Part of the issue with that is also because he runs Automatic and has WordPress.com. I think there's a major conflict of interest there with regard to him running that commercial company, which he has every right to do, of course, but yet treating the WordPress.org side of things the way that he is. He's basically the way it's working right now, because he's doing everything on a whim, seemingly, is that he wants people to contribute to core. However, he gets a lot of the economic benefit of that with the ability to change the rules. And obviously, WordPress is a really large economy, and a lot of people are making money on it. It's not just Matt, but he owns the trademark. He gets to change the rules. He uses the trademark very, very commercially. He runs the only company out there that actually does have a real, honest brand confusion with WordPress itself. It's a really fuzzy gray area that I just don't think has been handled very well at all. I just think that some of these issues could be solved by having the WordPress trademark owned by an actual separate entity. A WordPress Foundation is a separate entity where Matt is not the sole person, even if it's not even a three-board thing, a three-person thing where the other two are like nothing and Matt's it. That's fake. That's what's going on now. I think we need to have a larger board And I think we need to know exactly who's on it. It should be people who are actually in the space. I think that's what makes a heck of a lot more sense here. Yeah. About the topic of WordPress forks, there's been a lot of talk about, oh, they'll just fork the code. It's all GPL, and there'll be other new WordPresses, so to speak. I don't think that that is going to do the trick here. Obviously, there have been forks of WordPress, okay? And the thing is, you've probably never heard of them. That's the thing. The strength of WordPress is the ecosystem around WordPress. All of us doing things in this world of WordPress. People like me, people like a good chunk of you watching this, people who make themes and plugins. Yes, the brand recognition of WordPress. Yes, also the centralized repository of WordPress.org and how easy it is to put all that stuff. It's kind of like the App Store with Apple. It provides a lot of convenience to the iPhone, the fact that we have an App Store. Right? That's kind of the way WordPress is working right now. Again, it's a strength. It's also proving to be a weakness right now because the person who controls it has gone off on a whole different direction from the rest of us. But I don't think a WordPress fork is how you're going to solve it because it will ultimately be a brand that is probably not really known. You're sort of starting from scratch with a different brand. You're not going to have the inertia, and therefore, I just don't think that that's really going to work. Anybody could do it. I just don't think it's going to work. The other thing is, I've been seeing people say, "Oh, WordPress is now it's so unpredictable. It's unstable." I now recommend that my clients go and use something like Webflow. What are you thinking? That is not, yes, it's an alternative, but to go from one open source product like WordPress that you can still pretty much do whatever you want with, regardless of what's going on with Matt, and go to Webflow, which is completely closed source and proprietary, and you're stuck there, and you're replacing what your fear Matt might end up being. Webflow actually is. I mean, remember when they changed the pricing and people were freaking out, going, "Oh my God, they had your sites hostage." Why would anybody move from a platform like WordPress to a Squarespace or a Wix or any of these proprietary platforms where your site's basically stuck there? That's a stupid argument, and in my personal opinion, anybody that recommends to a client to go that route over something like WordPress because of the Matt thing is not serving their clients properly. In the end, we're going to have to see how this whole thing plays out. But the WordPress ecosystem ticks on. I think it's going to continue to tick on. I think Matt did open up a little bit of a can of worms with this. And I do think that some changes will probably come with the WordPress ecosystem as a result. I don't necessarily think they're going to be a bad thing, though. I think it's one of those things that in the end, what needs to happen is probably what's going to happen. I don't think that this thing has gone the way Matt thought it was going to go. I think he's on a little bit of a defense now, doesn't want to admit it. He's probably kind of angry about the whole thing. He's probably kind of surprised about how this has played out. I think when he portrays confidence in everything he's made and how it's all like part of a plan, probably not. I think this thing backfired on a way that he probably didn't expect was going to happen. And frankly, he brought it on himself. Again, I'm not going to badmouth him because I think he's done a colossal amount of good in the world. I really do. I don't think we would be here doing all this if it wasn't for actions taken by Matt Mullenweg. It isn't as if he created it, but he did put some structure into things that has helped this ecosystem grow to the size that it is. And so I will always be thankful to Matt for that role. But it doesn't mean that every decision he makes is a good one. And I will say the ones that I've been seeing him make over the last few months seem a little immature to me, and it's not serving the ecosystem and WordPress very well. And I wish he would stop and just kind of let this thing play out the way that it is. But all that being said, this whole thing has exposed some issues that I think need to play out, and I think it's going to go in the theme of decentralization. We need to go that direction in the world of WordPress. But in the meantime, I'm not concerned about WordPress as a platform. I continue to use it for my clients, not just because that's all that I know. It's not actually, but it's It's because I still think that it is the best way to go for the purposes of what I call digital sovereignty. It's where you can own and control your own website and your own data. And you can still do that with WordPress. One thing about anything that Matt's doing, he can't turn off your website. He just can't do it. And so that's a really, really important thing. One final thought to those of you who are in the WordPress business, like I am. I just want to remind you that if you think that that's your bread and butter is WordPress, I think you should reposition that and reframe that a little bit in your mind. The way I look at it is that I am in the customer service business. I'm there to support my clients with their web goals. I happen to use WordPress as a platform, and I still think it's fine. I'm not worried about the stability of it. But that's the business that you're in. So you people who are on there pontificating and freaking out, acting like, oh, I can't make stuff for WordPress, or I can't even recommend WordPress anymore for my clients because of Matt. I don't know. I think you're being a little short-sighted. I think you're being drama queens, to be honest. You're in the customer service business. You shouldn't have everything that you do so framed mentally around the idea of WordPress that you can't have a little bit of adjustability in what you do. Anyway, that's just a few side thoughts. All that being said, I think this video has been a little bit random because, frankly, the topic, I've got a bunch of little thoughts going together, but I just kind of wanted to make at least one video where I kind of made a few of my thoughts known about it. It's not going to change anything because honestly, my opinion doesn't matter that much. It's just that I have had some people email me and ask about it. So I figured I would make at least one video where I just kind of put my opinions out there for whatever they're worth. With that being said, I'll see you on the next video where we'll do something a lot more useful.